We are now seeing the beginnings of another stage of human evolution. These mutations manifest at puberty and are often triggered by periods of heightened emotional stress.
We were very aware that the future of comic book movies would be dependent on the success or failure of our movie.
I immediately wanted to take the edge off the names of the characters.
What do they call you? Wheels?
We're gonna let Wolverine be the cynical audience's view into this world.
Casting it set the tone for serious actors to play in comic book movies. That was radical.
War has begun.
These stories are not just a franchise. They're a continuing story which have got some importance.
The most common comment that I hear from fans is, we always knew it should be you.
I just saw it as an incredible opportunity to be part of something so unique.
What do you see? After it came out and I ran into fans, I realized if I got it wrong, I would have literally been torn alive by those Wolverine fans.
As a producer, one has a development person whose job it is to bring in material. We all look for material. And we had a wonderful guy named Scott Nimmerfro who brought the X-Men comics to my attention. He gave me these Marvel biographies of each character. The first one I read was Wolverine. I found him incredibly sympathetic. A man who doesn't have a memory, he doesn't know who he is. He has uncontrollable rage, unrequited love with Jean Grey. It's classic, really great. And I went on and read all of them. At that point, there had been other comic book movies that were not successful. So it wasn't a wide open field. There were not people wanting to make superhero comic book movies. It wasn't an easy sell, but I felt we could do it. We brought it to Fox. Avi Arad, Stan Lee was involved. We sold it to Bill Mechanic, who was chairman of Fox. The first script we had written was a terrific script, but it was unfortunately kind of, at the time, unmakeable. The budget for the first one had to be contained so that if we were a success, that we could afford to make more, because ultimately we knew they would cost more. At that point, Peter Rice was our production executive, and he was the one who suggested that we bring in Brian. Brian had just done Usual Suspects. He was in post on Apt Pupil, and Usual Suspects to me showed he could handle multiple characters. He had style, visual style. He could handle action, and that he was good with performance.
I wasn't really aware of X-Men. My friend Tom DeSanto, who was producing with me, thought that it would be a comic book franchise I'd identify with, that I would like. He felt that it was complex enough and there was enough conflict and characters. So he kind of pushed for me to have this meeting. I'd done some research before I went there on the characters. I didn't really read the comic. I just read up on the characters, so I knew what I was talking about. And when I got to the meeting, Stan Lee was there. And I kept bringing up one of the only movies I'd made, which was Usual Suspects. And he eventually said, "Why do you keep bringing up The Usual Suspects?" And I was confused. I said, "Well, because I made it." And he goes, "Oh my goodness, put it there. We love that film." He was just so sweet to me and deferential to me. So when I left that meeting, I went to an acting showcase for a friend, and I was sitting in the front row. For half the showcase, I had my head down trying to figure out how I could translate this comic book to a mainstream audience that isn't familiar with it.
The first ones of any comic book movie are always the hardest. You have to establish the world for those people who have no idea who the X-Men are.
Up until that time, the last comic book-based film was the last Batman film, and that was years earlier. So no one knew what it should be or what the tone should be, so they were just relying on me to get the script in line with the budget.
Brian's insistence on real characters rooted in reality, people that you could see walking down the street, I think helped give a seriousness to the piece that was unique and different, and we all believed in that.
I learned actually from my husband, Dick Donner, that action films play best if you care about the characters and you ground them in reality. Brian came to it naturally, and he understood that naturally. And so by doing that, our characters were able to live. For people who never read a comic and could care less about a comic, they could care about that character because he had very real-world problems.
My biggest inspiration was really the first act of Superman, the original. I have to credit Richard Donner. When you meet Clark on the farm and Glenn Ford is playing his father, and his original father, Jor-El, is being played by Marlon Brando, and it's taken very seriously. And I thought, that's the kind of gravitas, that's the kind of seriousness that this X-Men universe deserves.
Brian was very smart in wanting to open it in the concentration camps because it was very real. The Holocaust has been the worst intolerance to other people's beliefs in history. And so it set the tone.
We got up and running at one point. I had a crew.
It has been said many times that so much of the success of a project in cinema comes down to casting. You get the right people, and then you let them get on with it. The chances are that if the original decisions were good ones, the end result will be worthwhile.
I think I'm pretty good at casting. It's not my favorite part of the process because I really value actors, and to have them come in, only one will get the role. It's kind of a little torturous, I think.
When Brian and I were developing it, we decided early on that Patrick Stewart would be our Charles Xavier.
Welcome, Professor.
At the time, my husband was directing a movie called Conspiracy Theory, and Patrick Stewart was in the movie.
I was at Warner's doing ADR for Conspiracy Theory, and halfway through the session, I got a note asking me to go to Lauren's office when the session was done, and assumed it was a social visit. And as I walked in, she picked something up off her desk and held it up in front of her. And I stopped and looked at this, clearly a comic book. And I said, "What am I doing on the front of that comic book?" And Lauren said, "Exactly."
That's good, because that'll make the move to Magneto more pronounced, although I'm going to cover it this way.
My first meeting with Brian was a lunch here in Beverly Hills. When I showed up to say, "Thank you very much, it's really nice of you to ask me to do this, but I'll pass." But Brian is very persuasive and very delightful and amusing and full of ideas, and assured me that this was going to be nothing like anything I had experienced or done before. And then he sent me a pile of X-Men comic books, and I enjoyed them. I enjoyed them more than I expected to. And I was intrigued by this character. This wasn't my world at all, this world of superheroes.
I'm looking for hope.
I will bring you hope, old friend. And I ask only one thing in return. Don't get in my way.
Once we had Patrick in the role, it helped ground us as a more serious movie. Ian was next.
I had just filmed Act Pupil for Bryan Singer, and he told me that he was going to make a film called X-Men. And I didn't know anything about X-Men. I'd never even seen a comic, and he showed me some of them, and I was very taken with the graphics. The story I found a bit tricky to understand, but I got the idea. It seemed to me a bit of a challenge, but Brian knew a way to hook me in, because he explained that the argument that goes on between Professor Xavier, Patrick Stewart, and myself as Magneto was the familiar one from most civil rights movements, in which there's an argument as to whether we who are different should accommodate society and join in and pretend that our difference was not really important and that we were all the same, we were all equal, roughly Professor Xavier's view, or the Magneto approach, which is, no, we are different, we're proud of our difference, and if necessary, we're going to use violence to achieve our ends, which is to establish our difference. We don't want to be accepted, we want to be insistent as to who we are.
Have you tried not being a mutant?
It has got some social importance. It's not just an adventure story. It's not just fantasy.
I feel a great swell of pity for the poor soul who comes to that school looking for trouble.
Patrick Stewart and I are the same person, really. I mean, our careers have been very, very similar. We had lots to talk about and lots to share. And the sense that we were going on an adventure together with a rattling good story that deserved to be told.
And that was delightful for me because I had been a fan for decades, but we'd only worked together once in all that time. And the idea of going into a world so unlike the one we both came from was very attractive.
Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, from way back in their Shakespeare days, to me, were De Niro and Pacino. Like with Heat, Pacino and De Niro opposite each other in a movie. This is, to me, walking on set with Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, that's what it was like. They were two gods of acting that I looked up to for many years. So it was so exciting. And I kind of knew what eventually everybody would know, that really these guys made the film. They were the anchor of the film.
So then we were able to attract Halle Berry.
Storm, some cover, please.
Story has a very sort of quiet strength. She has a really interesting past, and there is something about Halle that feels that way too. There's an internal life that I think is intriguing. And for me, that's why Halle fit into Storm so well.
I'm telekinetic. I can move things with my mind.
Really? What kinds of things?
All kinds of things.
Jean Grey is the woman that every man wants. You know, Cyclops wants her, Logan wants her.
You gonna tell me to stay away from your girl?
Well, if I had to do that, she wouldn't be my girl.
So obviously we needed somebody beautiful. Famke had been in Bond. She had the strength, and she certainly was beautiful.
Comic book adaptations had been very specific, and they were kind of like a hyper-reality and not something that generally people could associate themselves with, but more in the abstract of, wow, a superhero, somebody very much different from what we are. But this was a whole different approach, and she felt grounded and she felt real to begin with, and her cerebral powers were kind of interesting to me to play around with. I started doing the research on the X-Men, starting to read some of the comic books, reading about them, and I realized, oh, this is really actually a fairly heavy thing to get involved with. There's all these different relationships between all the different characters, of course, all the different types of powers, and that made it interesting to me.
Jake? No!
I was cast before Jimmy, and so then I remember very vividly meeting him for the first time, putting the two of us together, and we instantly had chemistry, so it was a really nice fit.
Anna Paquin was a very unusual choice for Rogue, because in the comics, Rogue has a very sparkly personality, and she's a real spitfire, you know, and Anna is much quieter and has a little moodier presence, so she changed the character. She was such a good actress, and Brian was very interested in working with her as an actress. We needed a woman that we could paint blue who would look great, and we needed some fire, because Mystique is not an angry person, but she's very much, this is who I am, and if you don't like it, that's your problem.
You know, people like you are the reason I was afraid to go to school as a child.
Rebecca was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I work with a lot of men, And so when it comes to the women, are they sexy, are they pretty, I always bounce it off all the guys. So I held up the cover and I went around to all the guys and I said, do you like her? Is she beautiful? Is she beautiful? Yes, yes, yes.
An abiding memory of the first film in Toronto in November when it was extremely cold. We were filming at night and Rebecca came out to be filmed at 2 or 3 in the morning when the temperature was at its very lowest. I can see her now laughing. I'd have been crying. I'd have been the wimp saying, I can't get out of my trailer, I'm sorry, please send me home. That strength that she and guts she had as an actor, you feel in the way she played the part.
It was all sort of coming together. The only problem was we had no lead star of who was going to help carry the movie at that point.
By that point, we were juggling a cast of 10, and each actor had other commitments. We had to get going.
So we were actually shooting for weeks without a lead actor.
I never felt that I was participating in a genre film, in a superhero film, because our world on the set was a completely believable world. It was a real world.
Westchester, New York. You were attacked. My people brought you here for medical attention.
And we got a sense that it might just be possible that we had something unusual.
The first movie was the hardest, understanding how to make this movie. We really didn't know. We didn't know from a production point of view.
Why weren't we prepared for this, though? Where are the claws that are supposed to penetrate?
We didn't know from a storytelling point of view. We just sort of had this philosophy, sort of one day at a time, and that's what we did.
Do it again.
It was an endless uphill climb right until release.
There were times during the filming where the script was in flux. It kept changing.
Who is Magneto and what their relationship was?
But it's also about Logan. It's about his journey, too.
Then, I'm rehearsing on a stage, remember, some fly rig with Sabretooth, and I get a call from Tom Rothman and said, we're moving the film 6 months. And I went, oh, great, I have 6 more months, that's great. And he goes, no, 6 months earlier. And I was so inexperienced, I say to him, can that be done? And he said, we think so. And I hung up and I go,
Tom Rothman just called and said we're being released July 4th. We're being released July 4th. Rothman just called. We're the big summer event push movie. Yeah, they just decided it like an hour ago, and they just.
Does that mean we
Tom
get
just
more money?
called. Not for the budget, but for the promotion. Oh yeah.
it was crazy, it was tough. I remember taking a walk with Peter Rice through the 20th Century Fox parking lot, saying to him, when this fails commercially and critically, I will never be able to make one of these movies again, and I fear it might. And he says, we'll just have to see.
Perk up.
I remember sitting in the cutting room with Brian and both of us saying, we'll never work again. What are we going to do? We had no idea that people would accept this movie.
But you sort of felt that it was getting better. We'd get the film tighter.
We were never able to preview the movie. Usually you preview the movie and you know whether the audience is going to like it and whether they're going to recommend it. Because our visual effects were never ready, we couldn't preview it. So we really were going in blind.
I remember for the premiere, they went all out.
Fox tried to find an element of the movie and make it a big splash.
They put the entire audience in boats and took them to Ellis Island and had fireworks in the Statue of Liberty, and they turned the great processing hall of Ellis Island into a movie theater. And I had Spike Lee sitting behind me asking me, what do you think the sound's going to be like? And John Singleton, all these guys I knew or admired. It was a beautifully orchestrated premiere that was perfectly in line with the movie, and I thought that was amazing.
As early responses began to come through, it gradually became clear that there was something unusual about this project.
At the time, Harry Knowles and Ain't Cool was really powerful. And when he liked it and gave it a good review, we knew that at least we had a section of fans that would come and see it.
I was in New York, and I had read a couple of decent reviews the night before. So I decided foolishly to stay up late for the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, New York Times reviews to come in. So I stayed up till the crack of dawn, and they got delivered at the hotel, and we opened them up, and they were all terrible. They were not good reviews. And then that Friday night, Stephen Baldwin was co-owner of a restaurant, I remember. So I went to that restaurant to eat, and that's when they called me with the result. The Friday was like $21 million or something. Suddenly the reviews just were absolutely meaningless. And I have, to this day, been, not something I paid much attention to. And then the next day, myself and Rebecca and John Stamos and I went and picked up Howard Stern from his apartment and took him to the Ziegfeld to see the movie. And they sat me next to Howard Stern. Now, I grew up listening to Howard Stern. I lived in New Jersey. And he's sitting next to me. I don't know what he's thinking, and I'm only feeling decent about the last night's numbers, wondering if they're going to crash and drop off today. Halfway through the movie, it was about the scene when Magneto was lifting up those police cars. Howard Stern leans over to me and just says, "This is fucking great." And he talked about it all the time on the radio. It's great.
Do you actually go outside in these things?
What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
I was hugely surprised by the success. I think everybody was. I remember on a Saturday morning in New York, between 7 and 7:10, I must have got 5 phone calls. Now, in LA, that's 4 a.m.
That so many people related to that story, none of us had any idea. And so that was a really pleasant surprise.
Everybody was pretty pumped up. It was the right time, right place for that movie when it opened in July of 2000.
It opened to over $56 million, which was just unheard of at the time. Then we knew we could make another one. My favorite movie is X-Men 2 because we got it. By the time we started filming X-Men 2, we knew who the characters were, the actors knew who they were, we knew what they looked like, so we had the freedom to start inventing. We had a good base, and we had fun with it, and I think it shows. I really do.
You catch it at one point during his thing. Put your hand up there.
We went for broke. We asked for a lot more money, and we asked for almost double what we had in the first movie. Didn't quite get that, but we got a lot more money. And I think we put a lot of that on screen.
Oh, hello.
Brian rightly said, all the X-Men are beautiful. Let's get some mutants that are not so beautiful. And we ended up on Nightcrawler because of his look and also his power. We didn't have anybody else who could teleport.
I like that character, that sort of complex mix of a bit of a devil, a bit of an angel. People don't know what to make of him.
In the Munich circus, I was known as the incredible Nightcrawler.
Yes, save it. I like the way Alan played that role.
He was such a good actor. He'd just done Cabaret. We were both just drawn to his acting ability.
Most people will never know anything beyond what they see with their own two eyes.
We always went for the best actor. Brian Cox, Kelsey Grammer eventually in X-Men 3. Performance, acting ability drives us every time we select.
The second time was a lot smoother.
Action.
Some scenes were very challenging, like that Nightcrawler opening scene in the White House. It took a long time to shoot. But I said to the studio, I said, we can't cheap out on this. We have to make this a great sequence.
You are a god among insects. Never let anyone tell you different. It was decided by me, I think, rather than anybody else, that I should have an American twang to my accent rather than my own. A very distinguished voice coach was brought along to help me have a credible American accent. When I went back to do the second film, Brian confided in me that he liked my Magneto because he had such a wonderful English accent. So in the second film, if anyone notices, I don't bother trying to be American anymore.
Your journey really is to go from this window, come around here, and do that.
Tom Rothman came up and watched 3 scenes I showed him, and he just thought they were great, left in a good mood. It was just a lot easier. I had my editors, John Ottman, who edits and composes for me.
I'm most proud of that second movie. We delivered a lot more action pieces and deepened those characters a little more. So that was enjoyable.
We were all thrilled to come back, but I don't think any of us at that time thought there was going to be a third one in the making.
Quiet and action!
Class dismissed.
Cut!
I very much wanted Brian to direct X-Men 3, but he was offered Superman, and so we didn't get him.
That was tough to give up that universe, have someone else take it over. Brett is a good friend of mine and a really great guy, and he would call me from time to time during the process.
I need you to do some second unit shots for me.
He was also under enormous pressure with time and schedule and money. So there's some aspects of X-Men 3 that I really liked, some character relationships and some beats, some that were different than perhaps what I would have done.
What have you done to her?
Logan, you have to understand.
You're talking about a person's mind here, about Jean.
She has to be controlled. The scripts, as they developed, showed increasing vulnerability about Charles, and that was interesting. I liked that, so that it wasn't just some strong, brilliant, powerful leader all the time, but that there were doubts and question marks about him. That always makes a character interesting.
Don't let it control you.
Charles! When you see an individual who suddenly appears to be the complete opposite of what you thought he was, for actors, that's meat and drink.
Action! Go! Go! And come!
The third movie was trying to close up that trilogy of stories that Brian had set out to do, and that was hard. That was a hard movie to do. Again, we took on some big things, what with the Golden Gate Bridge.
When Magneto sails across San Francisco Bay on the remnants of the Golden Gate Bridge to fly to Alcatraz, You just believe it, don't you? You can only believe it because the actors believe it. There's a bit of acting involved, but the technology and the filming and the ingenuity of their devices is extraordinary.
That performance that Famke and Hugh have at the end is remarkable.
The scene between Wolverine and the Phoenix at the end of the movie, I always thought was a complicated scene because you have to really feel the love between these two people and this enormous sacrifice that he is about to make.
Jean! I know you're still there!
In playing her, I thought it was more fun to go back and forth between having flashes of the Jean Grey that we all knew being inhabited by the Dark Phoenix, which took over from her, but going back and forth was what made it interesting to me. Working with Hugh Jackman, I felt so safe in going through this journey with him, so that made it easier, but it was complicated. The distance between us, literally, we were both on other ends of this studio where we were shooting it in, and so it wasn't until the very end that they come together, which you really kind of hope for in that scene.
I love you.
And now it set up this universe that's so rich that there were spin-offs, of course, with Wolverine.
I think initially what sets Wolverine apart from the other characters is not knowing who he is the fact that he's on a quest. He's already marked by being a mutant. He is apart from society, and yet his goal is to find out who and what he is.
I knew Wolverine growing up. It was one of the comics I liked. I like the noiriness of it. I like the darkness of it, and I like the kind of poetic writing of the early comics. He's an anti-hero, and there's something about how dark his story is and how angry at the world and how that fuels his power, and I think people identify with that. I think that everyone's got a little berserker rage in them.
Let's go.
Wolverine was the character that we centered on in the first movie because we're seeing the world through his eyes. He's us, in a way. Who are these guys? Why are they together? Why are they helping me? Why do they want to help people?
He plays the skeptical side, which an audience should be skeptical of. He's naturally suspicious of this world. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He literally thinks they're a bunch of crazies, right? With these weird nicknames. Every instinct in him wants to run a mile. I think it's powerful because he's running away from himself and the pain within himself. He doesn't want to have to deal with things. So his journey is great. And the audience get to go along with that journey as he slowly uncovers things about himself. He slowly uncovers painfully that he's attached to people and that he actually does care, which he doesn't want to admit.
He goes from being a very cynical X-Man to being one who not only understands the X-Men, but understands himself better. And I think that journey happens over the two films, over X-Men 1 and 2. And it comes to fruition when he wanders into that chamber where he had the adamantium put in his body. And it was great to tell that arc, because he's more than a mutant. He's like Spock. Spock's, I think, the greatest science fiction character of all time because he's not just a Vulcan. He's half human. And Wolverine is not just a mutant. He's been tampered with by man, and he has that duality to him. And he's connected to both worlds, the world of evolution and the world of men.
So there was a little tiny sequence in the first movie of how Wolverine had been injected with the adamantium, and it was shot fuzzy and quick, and that became intriguing. And there was lots of rich questions in there that Gavin was stirring up and mining. That became a much more involved storyline and more detailed and more depth than we'd ever gone before. It went to a place that the other movies couldn't go to, where we just focus in on him and that relationship with his brother.
Well, well, well. Look what the cat dragged in. It's a kind of iconic archetypal idea about two sides of the same coin, that they were brothers and that Victor represented the darker sides of Wolverine. And I thought that that was something that would be really fun to embody and to get to work on with you. I won't deny, I liked that Victor had teeth and claws. Teeth and claws was good. I'd always been impressed by Hugh's discipline. You know, he's an amazing athlete. The amount of work that he does and the way that he has changed his body over the years is pretty remarkable. It's nothing that I ever thought I would have to do. But I was up for the challenge, and it was an incredible process. We literally ate an army of chickens and trained twice a day, and it was intense. And Hugh and I did a lot of the fighting work, the hand-to-hand combat, which is something that both of us like. And I have some experience with doing combat stuff, and it was really fun.
Stay down.
For me, despite the incredible nature of who he is, the claws, the healing ability, I approach everything in a very human way, try and understand the internal goings-on. What is the conflict? What is the pain? What is the drama within this character?
Unless Logan has a really intact moral compass, he's kind of just a monster.
Logan is desperately determined to prove himself a man, not a beast in human form, a man, which in turn sets up his ongoing conflict with Sabretooth because Sabretooth thinks he's an idiot.
You think you are. This is what we do.
We are what we are. We should just lay waste to whoever's in front of us and have a good time. For Logan, being what he's not is the whole point.
And I think what Hugh brings to it is a lot of integrity and, strangely enough, sensitivity that I think makes you identify with Logan and go on his journey. Because he's such a savage character, and so much of what he does is based on that berserker rage, for that to be embodied by someone who has so much natural charisma and integrity and kindness, it actually, I think, balances the character out.
Don't touch your hair. Whatever you do. This whole world of X-Men was filled with flawed characters, and they continue to be flawed and make mistakes and live with pain. And I don't think any character embodies that more in the X-Men universe than Wolverine. He is, in many ways, reminiscent of the characters I grew up loving. Mad Max, you know, Dirty Harry. He's the ultimate badass. Kind of incredibly macho, and he marches to the beat of his own drum. He's naturally kind of very suspicious of authority. He will not be told what to do. And there's lots of parts of him that you wish you were more like that. It is a great part to play. I wouldn't have played it for 13 years now unless I found him endlessly fascinating and interesting and three-dimensional.
The layering of the character. There are so many levels to that individual, and it's not accidental that there are levels to his physical composition as well, that he is more than what you see. And it's in this area that I think Hugh has been so remarkable, in that he can suggest sweetness, sensitivity, compassion, gentleness, and a terrifying ferocity and rage and uncontrollable fury, which kind of simmers away there all the time.
Ooh, shiny.
I think great movie heroes, you want to be with them. You want to see what they're going to do. Hugh Jackman exudes that quality to make you want to be with them. You want to be in that world. If you're going to navigate the X-Men world, you want to be with Wolverine to navigate that world.
All my years, I've never seen anything like this. And you gotta let this man walk away with your money?
The very first thing Hugh said to me the first time we met was, I'm sorry I'm so tall. Because he's 6'2", 6'3", and Wolverine's 5'3". And I said, it's okay. I tell people you play him short. And he does.
Die-hard true believers of the comic will scream till they're blue in the face. He's too tall, he's too tall. It's like, who cares? He's made the character his own. He walks on screen and you know it's Wolverine.
Hugh is absolutely the embodiment of Wolverine, and yet physically nothing like the embodiment of Wolverine all at the same time. He somehow manages to inhabit the character. The very first time you see the character in that first film with his back to you in the cage for the cage match, he hasn't even turned around to look at the camera yet, and I looked up and said, oh my God, it's him.
I never had the opening scene. I never had a real scene to introduce the character. So my friend Gary suggested this idea where we meet him as like almost a circus attraction, as the Wolverine. So I was thinking, well, maybe it'll be like a cage fight or something. And I kind of pitched that on the flow in the room at the studio at one point.
I got the part 3 weeks before I started filming. So I started to get into shape, but I was certainly nowhere near what I thought it should have been. I mean, I started going pretty hard, training really hard, and doing my best to eat. I really didn't know anything about the science of getting into shape or what I had to eat. So it took even longer. And if you look at the movie, the first scene I shot where you saw my physique was when I wake up in the mansion. I race down the hallway and I have my shirt off. If you look at me walk down that corridor, I am definitely not definitely not in shape.
He's shot in such a way that we kind of hide his love handles and don't feature him that much full on.
And I said, man, this is not what we need to be for this. I said, I know you don't want actors to read the comic books, but I've read enough to know that we know we're even in the same planet as what I need to be. And he said, here's the rule of film. 95% of people's lasting impressions of you will happen in the very first scene, the first time they see you. So if you're in great shape for that very first scene, you could pretty much do almost anything else. For the rest of it, they will only see what they saw in the first. So I actually had 4 months to get ready.
After the holidays, we're going to do this cage fight scene. He said, I'd like to do it shirtless. And I said, well, maybe we should wear a tank top or something like that. And he's like, no, mate, I've been working out. And I'm like, really? That showed a lot of dedication. I thought that was really cool. And then he showed up, and he was just awesome. And he rocked that scene. And that was the first time we meet the character. So it really set the tone.
Tonight's winner and still king of the cage, the Wolverine.
If you put up a freeze frame of my body in the first scene in that cage, as compared to that scene down the hallway, it's a great before and after.
And then by the end, we were shooting the stuff at the end of the movie, he was just superb. And then when he came back for the second X-Men, it was in his blood, in his DNA.
In my mind, Hugh and Wolverine are so tightly locked together, it would be impossible to imagine Wolverine any other way. He has made him a very rich and quite complex character.
We are the future, Charles, not them. They no longer matter.
The differing objectives of those two characters created the drama. And one of the most interesting things was how, while in the heart of a conflict, a philosophical and at times violent disagreement, there were the constant underlying threads of a great friendship.
So I went to Tom Rothman, and we were having lunch, and I said, I'd love to tell a story about how Xavier and Magneto met and how Professor X wound up in the wheelchair, how Magneto put him there, and how friends became enemies. I'd like to tell that story, but I'd like to call it X-Men First Class, which is the title of a comic book, which is kind of different, because I think, it's a good title for that story. That, in a way, will be a prequel that will get us back in the right direction. And he said, okay, we'll run with it.
We had wanted to do Young X-Men, and that's how it all started.
I started developing the script. Well, originally I was going to direct it, but I had a commitment to Jack the Giant Slayer, so we all decided I'd produce it. So we were looking for a director, and we had hundreds of people on a list. The only person who was not on this list was Matthew Vaughn. But I had met Aaron Johnson, the star of Kick-Ass, which I loved, one day, and then the next day there was this volcano, so none of the Brits who were doing promotion in LA could go back to England. So I was with a friend of mine at the Soho House having dinner, and Aaron Johnson walks in. He's like, yeah, we couldn't leave, mate, we're here. Hey, have you ever met Matthew Vaughn? I'm like, no. And he goes, oh, well, I'll introduce you. So Matthew Vaughn comes walking up, he introduces me, and then Matthew says, hey, so what's this I hear about you doing an X-Men film? I go, yeah. And I went, well, it takes place in the 60s. And then I kind of had a bit of a slightly tipsy conversation with him about it. And he was like, oh. So the next morning he texted me, and I went over to his hotel and pitched it to him. And then weeks later, we made a deal with him.
I think Matthew brought a different feeling to it. Matthew made a James Bond movie. The difficulty for First Class was in finding an actor that could fill Ian McKellen's shoes or Patrick Stewart's shoes. Will young Magneto be as interesting as Ian McKellen? Will young Charles Xavier be as interesting as Patrick Stewart? And we were very fortunate to not only have a good script, but to have the great James McAvoy, who approached Xavier as a man, even though he is the pacifist, as a man with a very rich inner life, who's a bit of a rogue in terms of women. And he tried to give him as many colors in terms of his character as possible.
Killing Shaw will not bring you peace. Peace was never an option.
And we were lucky to get Michael Fassbender, who then brought his complications to Magneto.
And he came in, knocked it out of the park, and it was a fight because we had promised to film with young X-Men, and he was perceived as not being young enough. We said to the studio, you need some patriarchy happening. There'll be plenty of kids in the movie, but he is young Magneto. He is the raw Magneto, and he's an incredible actor. So we won that fight by shuffling the Beast character and casting him younger with Nick Holt. Initially, it was going to be somebody a bit older.
It's rather unusual, isn't it, for actors to be playing the same parts concurrently. I mean, anyone who's worked in classical theatre knows that when you play Macbeth, the part doesn't belong to you. It's already been played by hundreds of other actors and will be in the future. Well, the same could be said of Magneto.
Michael filled Ian's shoes, I think, quite well.
Logan, my tolerance for your smoking in the mansion notwithstanding, continue smoking that in here, and you'll spend the rest of your days under the belief that you're a 6-year-old girl.
You do that?
I'd have Jean braid your hair. Welcome back.
My favorite moments are the funny moments. The only thing Brian and I ever fought about in X-Men 1, ever, was tone. I wanted some fun and some levity in it. And he, to his credit, brought the seriousness up. And so the one moment in the movie when Cyclops says, "How do I know?"
Hey, it's me. Prove it. You're a dick. Okay.
That's my favorite moment.
I think Jimmy just played it perfectly. Okay. The other also I remember was where I hope the alarm that goes off.
Security. It is an absolute...
And all the guys are looking at me like, really? And the 2 outer claws just leaving the middle one, which was Brian's idea, which I thought was brilliant. And probably the top of the lot is the cameo I did for X-Men First Class. They rang me and said, we want you to do a cameo. And I said, look, I'm open to the idea. What do we got? So they said, well, we don't want to send pages because, you know, it's highly secretive, but here's the idea we have. They told me. It's 3 words. It was actually 2 in the script. I ad-libbed it.
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lensher. Charles Xavier. Go fuck yourself.
It was fuck off. I changed it to go fuck yourself. But that was actually my last take. I said, give me one more. I thought go fuck yourself would sound better. And I said to him, I love it. This is so Wolverine. I said, can I just check? It's PG-13, so I'm guessing I'm the only one with the F word, right? And they said, yes. I said, I'm in.
I like Magneto's outfits. I had a fantastic series of robes and things that I could make different shapes with, and I like that. And I think Eric is a rather stylish dresser, whether he's in his slouch hats and his black overcoat, which I've still got. Ralph Lauren, red line, black. Lauren should have done it. Now you know where that coat is.
All of the scenes with Magneto were always terrifically enjoyable. And I especially enjoy what became quite a famous little scene in the plastic prison, where we're sitting across the table from one another.
It wasn't the work that I particularly remember. It was the fun we had in the trailer, you know, at lunchtime, reminiscing or having a laugh, hoping it was going to be all right, worrying that perhaps we were out of our depths or out of our comfort zone.
One moment that sticks very firmly in my mind, because I watched the movie recently. When we were escaping from the dam, Alan Cumming and Halle Berry had to carry me out of that doorway and up through the snow. Well, with all respect for 2 brilliant and delightful people, they're not the kind of people made to carry someone like me. The end result was that they kept letting me drop, and I would fall in the snow, and we shot this over and over and over and over again. You look carefully enough, and I think you can see that all of us are having the wrong kind of fun in the shooting of that scene.
Put the knives down!
I can't. It's been one of the great unforeseen surprises of my career. In fact, I can only say the word career because of Wolverine. I think prior to that, I was job to job and presumed in 5 years I'd have to fall back on my journalism degree. It has been a mainstay. It has been something that I've now done for 13 years, and a character I have loved and always loved going back to. And I think some people presume I have some multi-film contract with the studio. I don't. I look at it film by film. I take a good, honest look at myself at how much I enjoy the part. And for me, as an actor, if I don't feel I can do it better, if I don't feel I can go deeper, there's no point doing it. And each time I've gone back there, I've loved it. I've really enjoyed it. I've found it challenging every time. On one level, as a career, it has been the spine of my career. It landed in my lap and turned out to be one of the great surprises of my life.
Personally, I think the privilege of being involved with this is pretty remarkable. It just follows me around. I didn't write it. I didn't direct it. It's not, I didn't do that, but I was part of the team. I'm constantly reminded when I meet someone for the first time and they ask, what movies I've worked on, and to see the reaction they have. It's a privilege, and I don't take that lightly.
What it has meant to me personally was that it showed our industry that women can produce action films. There's not only myself. There's Laura Ziskin, who produced all the Spider-Man, and Gail Ann Hurd, who produced Punisher. Women traditionally have never been thought of in the same sentence of action movies. But I think we have shown that not only can we do them, but we can do them really well.
Better at what we do, I hope I am.
We're here to stay.
I am so very excited that we are stepping back into this world again, because it was so much fun.